We have a Craftsman YTS 4000 we're taking a look at here this morning. Customer brought it in and said that it shut off after they were mowing along about 20 minutes and wouldn't restart. They had to let it sit for I think a half an hour or 45 minutes before it would restart. It fired up though and seemed to be doing okay, but this has happened 3 or 4 times on them. Now this thing looks like 115 of 09. It's got a little bit of life on it. It's got the Briggs 24 horse V-twin Platinum. Well, that was real tight and connected. Just came apart when I opened it up. We'll get this hood out of the way. Now it seemed to run halfway decent when I fired it up to pull it in here. Obviously always check your oil before you start any engine. Most of the time we get these in, and even if it's a brand new engine or one that we serviced a short time ago, you know, you'll open it up, someone hasn't checked it in a year or two and it's almost completely out. See it all the time. But anyway, we're going to check this thing out. First thing I like to do is run it independently on each cylinder. So you've got 2 cylinders here. This is the 24 horse Platinum, so it's got a cylinder here and a cylinder on the other side. Now we want to test those independently just to verify that we're getting the full 24 horsepower out of our engine. Now if only one of these cylinders is running, a lot of times it's hard to tell. You know, if you're mowing only an inch or 2 of grass, that 12 horsepower is going to power this 42-inch deck perfectly fine. You know, this is only a 42-inch deck. You've got, you know, older mowers that 12 or 13 horsepower, you know, powers a 42-inch deck fine. Well, let's take a look and see if we've got both cylinders here first, just to start off with. And we'll go from there. Took a second to start, not sure what that was about. I haven't had it started yet this morning. I brought this up yesterday, but it's a little bit close. Try this side. So both sides run independently. Now if we have both of them hooked up, again, I thought it sounded pretty good when I brought it in. Didn't think that there was really anything bad sounding about it at all. Seems like it doesn't want to... Thing sounds pretty good here. We're getting fire on both cylinders. Now if one cylinder will not start on either side, the first thing you want to do is check your spark. Now we've got the spark checker. We can just turn it over and it'll tell us if that's, you know, a high, medium, or a low spark after we do that. I'm not sure. Apparently my battery must be dead right this second. Oh, there it goes. Obviously, if you don't have a spark checker, you can take the plug out and you can actually just kind of set it against the block, turn it over, and you should be able to visibly see at the tip of that spark plug that there is some sort of spark in between the middle and the outside. You can verify that as long as it's touching, you know, something like this. Set it up there. As long as it's touching, you should be able to see that spark in between there and the ground. We know we have spark on both cylinders because each runs independently. We know each one has compression because it runs independently. Now, if you have spark on one cylinder, but it's still not running on that one cylinder, you're going to want to check the valves. Now, just the 4 10mm bolts here, and I think they might be 3/8 bolts on this actually. Want to pay attention to that. Make sure it is the right one because they can strip out pretty easily if you do get the wrong size bolt on this. Anyway, take that valve cover off there and check out your valve train. Everything should be free. Your push rod should be on. Everything should be secure. We're not going to check that out here just because we've, already eliminated that as an issue. So this thing runs halfway decent. Fuel filter looks relatively new. Looks like there is some debris in the bottom of it. Now it's not a ton, but these fuel lines, the way they look, those things are probably original from 2009. And a lot of times what we see happen is this fuel line will actually deteriorate on the inside and start to collapse. It'll just get kind of rubbery and start to collapse on itself in certain spots. We see that a lot cause this, and then you basically just run out of fuel. It just sucks upon itself somewhere in that line. We also see on these the pickup. So this has a pickup that comes from the top of the tank and then a tube that goes down into the tank. Now, it doesn't have a screen or anything at the bottom of that. So it'll pull like some pieces of grass or whatever, and a bunch of them, and as it tries to go around that corner, they'll just kind of get stuck there. It just keeps building and building and building, and since 2009, it's probably put a couple pieces of grass or bugs or whatever at this corner piece, and that just restricts the flow that you're getting up front. Eventually, your engine can't keep up because the flow, everything that's in this line has kind of flowed as fast as it could, and there's a bottleneck somewhere. I see that a lot of times on these. We're gonna let this run, I don't know, for as long as it takes and figure out exactly what's going on. That's just one of the most common problems I see there. I also see, after things heat up, I see some ignition coils go bad. Now you can still test a spark after they heat up if you're shutting down and make sure that you're still getting spark to each side. That is perfectly fine. We also see there's a diode that sits on the kill wire in between these two coils on these Briggs and Strattons. We see those go bad a lot of times. So if you're having an issue with, spark on one side or the other, a lot of times you can take that kill wire off and test them independently after it heats up also, if you're having some issues with the coil heating up and cutting out. We'll leave this run for a little bit and figure out exactly what's going on. I've got no fuel at this point. Well, there's still some there. That's strange. Wonder if it was just enough. Sounded like it was running out of fuel to me. That's why I decided to take it off here. It's weird that there's still a little bit in the... Be very careful when doing this at home. You don't want that to spray on a hot muffler and start a fire. That's very important. Now, if you don't know the quality of the fuel that's in your mower, obviously here we have a fuel flow issue. You know, the fuel is not flowing up to the carburetor. That's why it's dying out. If you don't know the quality of your fuel, go ahead and hook it up just to a fuel hose like this and go ahead and just put it in a glass jar and kind of look at it. You shouldn't see any separate levels in your gas at all. If you're seeing separate levels, that means that there's water at the bottom. We see that as an issue a lot of times with this, where things will run good for a while and then they'll pull up a water pocket and then they won't want to run good. So every now and again you'll get them to start. See, it's weird because it does look, if you look at the fuel filter here, it looks like we still have fuel in the fuel filter. So a lot of people would probably diagnose this as a bad fuel pump, but I don't think that's the case. We're going to take off this pickup and see exactly what's going on. It's either that or the fuel line, I suspect. So let's check the pickup. You're going to want to just grab a hold of the fuel line and just kind of spin it to break it free. And you should be able to grab a hold and just kind of pull it off. Looks like maybe a little piece of the inside of the fuel line came off at that point. It does look like this fuel line's in pretty poor shape, kind of deteriorating all around. Got plenty of fuel in it, pretty much up to the top. Oh, I had fuel up to the front. Now I did kind of clean this area off before we started, just to make sure nothing gets in that tank. That's best. Now, oh, got a little bit of something that probably contributed a little bit to the fuel not getting to the front. That's real nice. I wonder how much grass is actually in this tank. I mean, it's from 2009. I always wondered how that happened and how things got into people's tanks until one day I got finished mowing and I looked down and my cap wasn't back on. Well, I've got pine trees and everything else, you know. Yeah, things happen, things get in them. Somehow, some way. This tank's probably going to need completely flushed out. I mean, I think that's all of it down in there, but that was a pretty big chunk. Pretty big chunk of stuff up in there. And then this fuel line's also starting to deteriorate. So we're going to empty the fuel tank, clean it all out, and then replace the fuel line going all the way to the front along with the fuel filter. Go ahead and replace this grommet while we're at it also. That should solve our problem and get us back pumping fuel. If all of this checks out and you're not getting any restriction, obviously it could be a fuel pump issue. I hardly ever see that on the Pulse fuel pumps. It's very, very rare. You know, I get maybe one a year that's bad. Other than that, I hardly ever see them. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you guys see something else, let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.